Good morning and welcome back to Flashback Friday here on Gaming with ADHD, where today we're going to take a look at the 1998 book Renegade Legion Centurion Blood and Steel Vehicle Briefing. This is a book all about tanks and ground vehicles for use in the game Centurion. Now, it was originally released for first edition Centurion, but I believe it is still compatible with Centurion second edition. So depending on what you find out in the marketplace, just be aware of that. But the reason I wanted to take a look at this is because FASA had a tendency in these kinds of books to provide lots of art, lots of information and background about the particular vehicles. Now, this is going to be sort of like an unboxing. Basically, we're just going to kind of go through, get our first impressions. I have not been able to use any of the content in a game yet, but it's more about looking at the history and what was there. Keep in mind, this book did release in 1988, so it is, getting close to 40 years old now. But with that out of the way, do make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. I try to put out a few videos each week covering all sorts of content, from role-playing, miniatures, card games, board games, everything in between, and I'd love for you to come along. All right, well, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So this is our cover. So do forgive me for the glare from the lights. Obviously, it won't be as big an issue on the interior, but already they're kind of giving you an idea of what you're going to get out of it. If you think of any of the, I want to say the companies like DK or something, where they'll put out like Star Wars blueprints or Star Wars technical guide or Star Trek officers shipyard manual. I mean, whatever. You'll get this kind of look where you have like cutaway and you can actually see the interiors, and so like here we've got piping and ductwork, and we can see the seats for the driver and the commander, the different systems. Now, what I always think is interesting is this how the engineer would put it together? I don't know. But it's still just a fun look into this fictional world. All right, so we are going to go relatively quickly. The book is about 130 pages total, but it is packed full of art. And so that's more what I want to focus on, just because... Again, I can't exactly tell you what the stats do. Those will come in future videos as I finally get some gameplay under my belt. But, once the game released, they did similar to what they did with Battletech, is they gave you new vehicles, new equipment, new products to buy. So, actually, we'll start with this. It says the latest reference work dealing with the galactic war between the Terran overlord government and the forces of the Commonwealth and their Renegade Legion allies. The Centurion Vehicle Briefing examines the most common vehicles used by both sides, contains descriptions and illustrations of 55 vehicles, including their development, performance, deployment, and history in combat. Though the editors of this manual had no access to the latest military secrets, the information presented is as up-to-date as possible. The Vehicle Briefing is intended to be a reference book for the most common ground and grav units. The entries are divided by classes for easy use. All right, so that was another thing. They always present these kinds of books as like in-universe descriptions. So like the Battletech Technical Readouts were usually like some kind of an information report for one of the great houses, something like that. So we're going to start with our light ground vehicles. So these are obviously tracked and wheeled. The art is very interesting. It's very much... So first off, it's better, I think, than you would normally see in Battletech art. This is the Clodius ground APC. But you get a lot more shading, a lot more detail. than you get in Battletech. But also, it kind of has like an ogre feel to it from Steve Jackson games. Then we've got the Hasta light ground tank. The art also, while it feels kind of dated, it also kind of has a retro feel to it. We've got the Jupiter light ground tank. I like these tracks. I don't know why they have two sets and why they're put in different areas. That's the interesting thing about concept artists is you get some weird ideas that maybe aren't the best functionally. The Cyclone light ground tank. The Scamp light ground tank. And already into medium ground vehicles. So, yeah, they're fun designs. I like what the artists were doing here. Renegade Legion seems like it had a bigger budget for art. Unfortunately, the game just didn't last or do as well. The Atlas, medium ground armored personnel carrier. These big kind of moon surface balloon tires. And that's the thing. They also look like they're out of like the 60s or 70s for some of these designs, even though they're all brand new, or quote unquote brand new for the time. Kershaw medium ground tank. The Vindicta medium ground armored personnel carrier. The Agitator medium ground tank. So, interesting choice on how to deploy your turret. Fair enough. The Fauchard medium ground armored personnel carrier. The Harasser medium ground armored personnel carrier. Which, that looks like a lot more like a tank versus a armored personnel carrier, but what do I know? The Jaguar medium ground armored personnel carrier. The Pilus or Activator medium ground armored personnel carrier. And we're going to get into our heavy ground vehicles. So, Centurion is very much known for the grav tanks that float around. So this was kind of interesting to see them push more of the wheeled and tracked vehicles. So we've got the Cestus, the Crassus, heavy ground tank and riot suppression. Interesting. Reginus heavy ground tank, Stratos air defense, Halberd heavy armored personnel carrier, Procurator heavy ground tank, Sterling heavy ground tank, and finally we're getting to the grav vehicles. With heavy acceleration, or excellent acceleration, these nimble craft serve many useful purposes on today's battlefield. They are the best recon craft, quickest at delivering infantry to the fray, excellent for flanking maneuvers, and the workhorse for planetary raids. With modern doctrine putting more emphasis on maneuverability, light grav vehicles are the most versatile craft today. The Aeneas light grav tank. So they're definitely, I would say, simpler designs than we would get out of something like Battletech. It's just the art and, again, the shading and the detail. Battletech art was very black and white, whereas, even for black and white art, you can tell they're putting some detail into lighting effects, things like that. The Lupus light grav armored personnel carrier. Lots of armored personnel carriers, especially for a game that's more about the tanks than the infantry. Nissus, Vespasian, light grav tank. Bata Revo, or Wolverine, light grav tank. Chictal Nor, Graceful Death. Has a very, we'll call it Rifts vibe to it. Nautikal Viper, armored personnel carrier. Seeker, light grav vehicle. Vindicator, light grav tank. Going to the medium grav vehicles. The Horatius, medium grav tank. Hippospis Hydarnus. They did not want to make it easy for you to say these names. I mean, I realize they're going for like kind of a Latin, Roman kind of feel to it, but still. Labienus, medium armored grav personnel carrier. Pallas. Romulus. Bit Knockball, or Catapult. The Liberator. Now, this is an interesting choice. So here, use this tank in its destroyed form. But I actually do like that they're not afraid to do that with some of the art. It gives it a different feel, a different look. I can get behind that. The Scorpion. The Spartius. The Trojan Horse. Medium grav armored personnel carrier. Kind of makes sense. Looks like a box on, grav plates. All right, heavy grav vehicles. I feel like I'm picking up a 1980s sci-fi book. I mean, I am picking up a 1980s sci-fi book, but I mean like a fiction novel with some weird tank on the cover that, doesn't necessarily match what's inside. I don't know. The Augustus. The Ferox Rex. The Octavian. The Trajan. Obviously diving hard into that Roman feel. The Crusader. The Deliverer. The Dominator. The Eliminator, or Cincinnatus. And some specialized vehicles. These look like pilot heads sticking out above from the TOG. The Status Grav Scout Vehicle. So those probably are the heads of the pilots. Oof. The Scipio Anti-Aircraft Vehicle. The Eradicator, another anti-aircraft. Pompeii. Pedon. Artillery piece. And the Remus. That's a very different piece of art. Medium grav armored engineering vehicle. Okay. The Constructor. And that's it. So, one thing I will point out real quick. So, they basically duplicated what you would see in a Battletech technical readout. So, first off, you'd start with, just basic stats, what its class is, the cost. I don't know why you're buying tanks. I mean, but whatever. Maybe it was the balance system, so you get to, you have 10 million credits to buy tanks with. I don't know. Mass, engine, movement points, scenario points, infantry squad, digging cannons. Those are all interesting terms. You then have the turret, or the armor, and the weapons, and then you go into an overview, and they would actually give you obviously 10 paragraphs in this case worth of just background capabilities. So basically describing, okay, well, this is what this tank is, this is what it's used for, things like that. And then deployment, so who it's actually being used by, where, things like that. So obviously they're trying to bank on a tried and true method. They used it with Battletech. Battletech, you'd have all of your stats that you can transfer over to a record sheet. In-game fiction about what the mech is, capabilities, why you would use it, maybe different variants, things like that. And then in Battletech, instead of deployment, you'd usually see like notable pilots, something like that. So it's a tried and true method for them, and I like it. It's one of the reasons that even though the game is now 30 some years out of print, I was very curious about it. I was very interested, and I want to dig into it, play it some more. But there we go. So that is the Renegade Legion Centurion Vehicle Briefing. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff. If you've played with this, please put a comment down below. Let me know more about your experience. What should I look for? Are there units that aren't worth it? I mean, there probably are, let's be honest. But, let me know. I'm digging into this game and having fun with it, so I absolutely want to learn more. But with that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, we'll have links down below to our social media on Facebook and YouTube. Also, I do have a link to DriveThruRPG if you purchase any of your gaming products in PDF. It's just a way to help out the channel a little bit, help us bring more things to review. But regardless, I do appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you next time.